All right, let's get right into this. Picture this. We're in 1930s Chicago. Think gangsters, think social chaos, and right in the middle of it all, a dark, gothic story about loneliness, creation, and all-out rebellion. This is the story of The Bride.
So, right off the bat, we get this really interesting twist on how the story's being told. These words, well, they're supposed to be coming from Mary Shelley herself. You know, the author of Frankenstein. The idea is that her spirit has possessed a woman named Ida, just so she can finally tell this tragic, untold story.
And the setting is so important here. Chicago is just simmering with crime and trouble. And Ida, the woman our narrator is possessing, gets mixed up with a pretty nasty gangster and ends up murdered. Her body, just left for dead, is about to become the center of a seriously wild experiment.
And this right here is the question that just hangs over the entire story. It's like a moral landmine. I mean, it's one thing to want a friend, right? But it's a whole other thing to play God to get one. And believe me, asking this question is going to lead to some very, very dark places.
Okay, so let's meet the guy making this monstrous request. It's Frankenstein's creation, and he now goes by the name Frank. And you have to understand, he's been around for over 100 years, and the loneliness, it's just completely crushing him. So his journey, fueled by a literal century of being alone, brings him to Chicago and to a scientist named Dr. Cornelia Euphronius. She's doing this cutting-edge, borderline insane work on resurrection. And Frank, he has one single, desperate plea. He needs her to create someone, anyone, who can finally get what it's like to be him.
And just like that, the stage is set. Dr. Euphronius actually agrees. So using the body of that murdered woman, Ida, they start this incredibly dangerous experiment to literally defy death itself.
The whole process is as creepy as it is scientific. So, step 1, they have the subject, Ida's body. Step 2, they perform the procedure, this radical experiment. And then step 3, against all odds, it actually works. She awakens. The bride is born.
But here's where things get really tragic really fast. The resurrection completely wipes her memory. She is a total blank slate with no clue who she is. And Frank, he sees his chance. He tells her this just devastating lie, that she's his wife, and she just lost her memory in some accident.
So Frank tries to introduce her to the world, to build this relationship that is, well, it's about as bizarre and unstable as it gets. This is not your typical love story, not even close. It's a romance born from a lie and pretty much defined by terrifying violence.
And you can just see how quickly everything spirals out of control. They have these little moments where they try to be normal, going to the movies, hitting up nightclubs. But then a couple of guys harass the bride, and Frank's monstrous side just erupts. He brutally murders them, and that one act of violence kicks off a massive police hunt across the entire city, led by this one detective, Jake Wiles.
And just like that, they become this kind of dark, twisted, gothic Bonnie and Clyde. But here's the crucial difference, right? Bonnie and Clyde chose to be outlaws. Frank and the bride, they're outlaws because of how they were created. They were forced into a world that was never, ever going to accept them.
But here's the thing. Frank didn't get the quiet, passive companion he was hoping for. Oh no, not even a little bit. The bride begins this powerful and totally unexpected transformation.
This quote really just says it all. She doesn't just wake up as an empty vessel. She starts to develop her own consciousness, her own identity, and man, her own rage. She is anything but controllable.
She completely rejects being this passive object that he created for himself. She starts to feel her own anger at this cruel world she's been thrown into. She finds her own voice, and it's a violent one that pretty soon starts to match Frank's. In fact, her fury actually starts to push both of them even deeper into chaos.
And here's a really cool bit of context for you. This is such an important choice. In the classic 1935 movie, Bride of Frankenstein, the character is barely on screen for a few minutes, and she never says a single word. So giving her a powerful, furious voice in this story, that changes everything.
And all this rebellion, this fight for an identity that she never even asked for, well, it can only lead to one place, a totally devastating and tragic ending.
The breaking point comes when she finally figures out where she came from. She completely, utterly rejects Frank, the monster who had her made, the man who lied to her, the captor who demanded she obey him.
For Frank, this is the worst betrayal imaginable. He created her to stop his loneliness, but instead, she's become the source of his greatest heartbreak. and that devastation pushes him to do one last, truly horrific thing.
He destroys them both. It's that simple and that terrible. He cannot live with her rejection, and he won't let her live without him. Their whole story, which started from this desperate need to connect, ends in just absolute mutual destruction.
So when you really peel back all the layers of this Gothic tragedy, what you find is this powerful story about loneliness and that desperate need we all have for a connection. But it's also about the fight for your own identity, about rebelling against a world that fears you, and of course, about the terrifying consequences of playing God.
And all of that leaves us with this one final question that just kind of sticks with you. It really is the moral heart of the story. If you have the power to create life, does that give you the right to control it? I mean, really think about that. If you can give life, do you then get to decide how that life is lived?